Okay, hey, welcome to another session of the church building system. David and I are going to do this one together. We want to wrap up some thoughts on teams and then maybe where we go from here. And so we have a live audience we're going to get some questions from. And so, where are we? Questions? What came up during break that might have be something you want further clarification, or how does it tie together? Yes.
Okay, so what's the right response if you're not leading the team meeting or just the team in general, and they want to go straight to accountability? They don't want to go through any of the earlier steps. They only preach accountability, but there's no trust. There's nothing that has been built beforehand. How do you respond to that? How do you get them back to the earlier stage?
First, I need to repeat the question so it's on the mic. So say that over the first part again.
If the team leader just wants to go to accountability?
Okay, if the team leader just wants to go to accountability,
how do you get them back to the earlier stages?
how you get them back to the earlier stage? So you're talking about like accountability with the team members on something where they haven't gone through the rest of the process on becoming a team?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they're just preaching accountability and wanting results,
Yeah.
how do you get them to go back to the earlier stages of the process without ruining the team dynamic or speaking out of place?
Good question. Got a thought on that one? No, me neither. Next question. Yeah, that's a tricky one. Because if you're the team and you're trying to lead up, which there are ways to lead up, and that works better some places than it does others. But do you have some thoughts besides maybe asking some questions, the team asking questions, to get them to go back if they understand there's a process before that?
Well, to me, the question sounds like there's something behind the question that I'm not getting. So it kind of refers to a certain situation, because I think as a good leader, you want accountability, and you want to emphasize that to the team, that it's important. So it's more of a matter, I think, how you want to obtain the accountability, so to say. If it's demanding and there's no real team setting yet, it's going to be hard, because people will fight it and resist it, and then the team leader, I think, gets stuck because he doesn't know why are they resisting it. Well, that is just because it's only top down again, right? If the accountability is only kind of demanded or asked for or pressured only top down, it will never work, because people will fight it. Because the team or the people don't know why they resist it, but they do. And it's just because of the how-to.
I mean, I think, and let's see if this fits maybe some of your situation, that lots of times when people get put in positions of leadership, the only thing they know is direction and accountability. And there's a whole bunch in between there, like the training, the equipping, the coaching, whatever it might be, that isn't there to go with it. So direction's given and they just expect you to do it without everything that you need. So I don't know, maybe sometimes it could be, depending on the situation, hey, could we have a training session on such and such? Or something. I don't know if it's fitting, for your question exactly, but yeah, that's a gap. And coming from the outside, we might say, hey, we recognize a gap in the systems or the processes somewhere. Here's maybe a suggestion on how to fix that. But if somebody doesn't have that place, then that's difficult. If you're the person that's just expected accountability, it can be difficult if you can't get them to fill in the gap somewhere, if you know what the gap is.
And I'm not sure what kind of situation you're talking about, but what I have seen in sports, in businesses, and in the church world and ministry world as well, is that like we want to raise up leaders that can lead any team. Well, of course, there are some abilities in there, but if I know how to start a team and how to turn them into a team and how to lead a team, if I know that stuff, then I can, at a functioning team, I can lead any team. I can lead even the praise and worship team, although I have no skills there, right? Mm-hmm. So the problem in so many churches, ministries, businesses is that there's a person who's very skillful at doing something, and he or she's been doing this for 5 or 10 years, and then they make that person the leader over that area. But the person can be skillful at doing the things, not knowing how to lead people. Mm-hmm. That's happening all over. Yeah. So they have to learn how to become more relational to the people or the team, which is bottom up. And so actually what happens so often is that when you're skillful at something and you only look at what we need to do, then only the top-down thing is there, not being really relational to the people. So it's only about what to do. I believe that in so many teams, it's still upside down, that to me, a team is more about the people than the things that we do.
Yeah.
And so often it's more about the things that we have to do, oh yeah, and we have people. I think that's wrong. That's not a team thing. That's why we focus first on how to establish a team culture.
And in a business, they're looking at bottom line. They don't care so much about you as they do their bottom line. That's unfortunate, and hopefully in a Christian business you get both. But in the church world, then we have to look at it that way. You know how it is with some situations, there's no good answer to a bad situation if you don't have the influence to change it. And then the only thing you can do is keep your attitude right as long as you're there. You're for people, not against them. All the good Christian things that we should be. But sometimes there isn't a good way to fix it from down here if the problem's up here going all the way through. So that's why, I think there's going to be a whole generation of young people that are going to start their own businesses, pastor their own churches, and learn how to do it right, or better at least than maybe some of what we were exposed to through the years. We had to learn what not to do before we learned what to do. And that, I don't think that's right, but that's what we had. When we were starting to change how we were functioning, it took a long time. We were already moving along. We had a ship that was moving, and we had to turn some things. And so even knowing the right things to do, it took years to turn some of that. I don't even want to tell you how much money I spent on training, going to the places where I could get some help, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was a lot of money over a lot of years. But none of this was natural for me. Everything had to be more of a learned skill. So, I figure if I can do it, anybody can do it. So, hope that helps a little bit on that one.
Is there a way to determine how much responsibility is too much responsibility to give someone?
Yeah, good question. Is there a way to determine how much responsibility is too much responsibility? We mentioned quickly when we were talking about delegation, and then somewhere in here, that there are levels of delegation, and we should never delegate to somebody more than they have the skill or the competency to do that. But let's say that you're on my team and I say, I'd like you to do this, and I know that you're 60 or 70% ready. As long as I know that I'm going to have to help fill that gap for you for a while so that you succeed at that, we can still do it. You may not be 100% competent, but with my help for a little while, you will become 100% competent. So if you're 30% competent and I say, go do this, this is yours, and you're kind of standing there when I walk away going, I have no clue what to do here. Well, I just set you up for failure. And that's wrong on my part. And then I wasn't gauging whether I should give you that responsibility the way I did. It's a learning process too. But delegation goes everywhere from, hey, here's just a simple task, to go do that, maybe report back that it's done, to I'm entrusting you not only to here as a direction to go, but how you're going to do it. So it's kind of boom, 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 boom levels on how you do that, and you have to gauge that based on individuals a lot of times, or the team competency. So you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think for in the church world where we mostly work with volunteers, the element of time is vital in this as well. I have had situations where someone was quite ready to take on a new responsibility, but just couldn't figure out how to create time for it.
That's a good point.
And so they would come back to me and say, I looked at it right now, I want it, I just cannot make the time for it. However, whatever I look at it or try to fix it, I can't. I always would say, thank you for your honesty. I like your answer. Because maybe in a couple of months they do find time for it and they are willing to take it on. Can you see? But I've learned over these years, especially working with volunteers, when people say yes, I become a little defensive, like, really? And if people say no, I want to find out why no. Just a yes or a no is not good enough. But all the time, always when people think about it, pray about it, to see if they got time for it, because the more skills you have, the more ability you have, the more people will draw on you to do something. And if someone is a good manager of their time, I always respect that.
Yeah. We should probably qualify that if we ask somebody to take out the trash, there's not a lot of prayer needed, right? Or leading by the Spirit or anointing. So there are some things that in the family that we're in a team or in a church, that, we're not talking about something that's a, 14-hour-a-week commitment for the next 30 weeks. So there's some things that we just need to do, and that's part of the family business. But the other parts like that, that's a good point on the time. Yeah.
So earlier we said that we know building a team can be slow, especially when dealing with volunteers. And so most leaders naturally are drivers or results oriented. Is there any pro tips that you guys have got to sustain yourself from the start to getting to where the goal is, to help avoid that frustration?
No.
You want more than this?
No, I know exactly what you're saying. And this is, a pro tip would be a good one, and maybe we should come up with those on this because I think it would be helpful. That was something that I had to learn over time. And again, part of it was taking my focus in the church world, taking my focus off of the task and put it onto the person. My real deal is to grow this person, and along the way we'll finish this. Where in the business world we might finish this in 2 weeks, and here it might take us 20 weeks, just because of the time involved. It's painful sometimes. But if my purpose is to grow people, so that the pro tip is maybe where your attention is put. Now, in the business world, if you have to make money, there's some things you can't turn 2 weeks into 20 weeks for. That doesn't work. But at least when we're talking about discipleship of people and building something inside the boundaries of the church, then I think we have to just put our eyes on the people and not so much the task, even though that doesn't mean we should take it completely off of that. Right? We can't just say, well, we're all about people, so if it takes 2 years, fine. No, that's not good either. Right? So you have to balance that out. But I would say, patience, long-suffering, faith,
love,
and still a little bit of pushing. Right? I don't know about anybody else, but I don't think anything God has ever done with me was easy. He was pushing, there was pressure. And maybe that's because I was resisting. I don't know. But I don't think a little bit of pressure hurts people. Now, some cultures say if it's pressure, it's not God. And I'm like, well, I don't know what God you've been serving all your Christian life, but the one I have seems like he's always putting pressure on me to grow and to change and to develop. So I don't think a little bit of pressure hurts, even in that whole process. But I think we will come up with some pro tips for that, because I think about that one often, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that if we talk about churches, ministries, we talked about drawing from this pool of disciples. That's what they did in Acts chapter 6. Where did the 7 come from? From a pool of disciples. Even the Lord Jesus, when he was selecting the 12 in Luke chapter 6, verse 13, he was selecting the 12 from a group, out of a group of disciples.
Of John, yeah. At the time, right?
So, disciples, they want to learn the Word of God, but they also want to do something, right? So, I think that's one of the main things usually, is that so many try to draw from just believers. You know, but not every believer is yet a disciple, because that comes by decision.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we draw from believers, believers have more of tendency like, I'll just go to church, let me sit here, I'll be okay. So disciples, they want to learn, they want to grow, you know, they have that in them. So I would draw from that pool.
Now you might go, you can read stories about, missionaries who have gone to jungles there and Christ had never been preached. Well, you're not going to find a group of disciples there. So first you got to make them converts, then make them disciples, and then you can do something with them. And that's one of the, when it comes to recruiting, the recruiting looks a little different depending on the team you're recruiting for. Jesus, for instance, when his was a real pioneer team, mm-hmm. and even though these guys were maybe more disciples of John at the time or something, they were disciples, but he had to go out and say, come follow me. They knew that he was a teacher and a healer. He had a little bit of that reputation, but so he's actually somehow got some kind of leading to a person and say, hey, come follow me. And when you go pioneer a work, if you do it in missions or a city where maybe there's not a lot of churches, you're going to have to start somewhere. And if you're just praying, God send laborers, you may get some, you may not get some. You might actually have to go out and start compelling some people to be a part of the team somehow, sharing the vision of what you want to do, in one way or another. If you can't find a group of disciples, you might have to make a group of disciples. That's going to take time.
Yeah.
But worth it, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to go slower to go faster.
Yep.
To build on the first question regarding a team where the leader is only focused on accountability and either doesn't know the other phases or isn't interested in them, you had said previously that conflict and healthy discussion should be initiated by the leader. If you're a team member on a team like that, should you attempt to push and initiate having those kind of conflict requests?
I love that question. So if you go back to the first question about, if there's a leader that's looking more for accountability, doesn't know all the steps, and if a leader is the one who should initiate constructive conflict or passionate discussion inside the team, can a team member initiate that? You can, and you'll probably be out of that job fairly quickly. I know that because I've done that. Even when the question was asked, and like, well, here goes. This is probably the beginning of the end here, but you know, the leader asks you, they think they want an honest answer, and you give the honest answer, and guess what? You're out. And because we had passionate conflict or discussion inside there because of a conflict. And then in the case I'm thinking of, it was a person. And, you know, so the leader said, hey, what's the deal here? Quiet, quiet, quiet. Finally somebody says something, and then, you know, it gets a little bit more, and then all of us who actually spoke up didn't work there very long. So, you know, that happens. So you can, and especially if you're looking for a way out, then that will probably work. It probably won't work otherwise, and it's pretty frustrating, isn't it? But, yeah, it probably won't work. Not unless the leader is engaging in that one.
But there's also a certain danger in it, I think, because hearing your question, I was reminded of working at a job, and I became part of a team where 7 people were working there, and 3 people were actually not happy with the leadership. And so they were talking constantly with the 3 of them negative about our manager, our leader, and that's a real danger, I think, because if you're frustrated with it and you cannot express this in a meeting or to your leader, you'll start talking to other people. And so they did it in this team, having a very negative influence on the rest of the team, because they would talk about it where the others were there as well. So what happened was that actually I stood up and walked to them and said, listen, we cannot do this. I don't fully agree with the leadership. However, we are not in the authority nor the position to be a judge about this. We're workers. So there's just one thing that you can do if you don't think this is ever going to change, and that's just find another job. If you don't like it here, maybe you'll like it somewhere else.
And be more careful on the way into the next one.
That might be
possible.
wise. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it kind of depends on your leader as well. Like if there's some room for this and a leader gives that room, right? Well, see how it functions, but usually it doesn't work.
Yeah, it usually doesn't.
Or it doesn't work well.
Yeah. And I'll just say this too, along with all this, you know, that we started at this level, but every ministry, since a lot of this has to do with leadership in the church, should have a succession plan of some sort. And it starts here. If you're waiting for God to send you the person to take over after you, wouldn't it be better if you raised them and trained them so they had your heart? And we see this too often where there's the one and done. Why are they one and done? Because they didn't know this or weren't willing to do this. And this is a lot of work, we've said that, but in the end, what it leaves you with is a whole bunch of people who can follow after you, who can keep the work going. What we start, we want to keep going when we're long gone. And you can only do that if you raise up leaders. You need leaders to build, and you need leaders to continue. And it all starts right in here to make that happen. We're just going to take a few more minutes. Another question?
I know with the teachings we've had thus far, it's like we have one leader wanting to start something, so you have no team to really do this. But in the building team and empower team moving forward, do you ever see that the leader in these steps that we've already had being more of a team, like a team effort to lead a team, to start a team, to become a team? Because then you end up with people with different strengths, different ways to help each other to start that team or to lead that.
I'm hoping that got picked up on our microphones, because there's no way I can repeat that one.
I'm still waiting for the question.
Did it come on the mic okay? We're good on that, yeah. So question,
No, do you see moving forward that you end up with a leader team doing everything that you have described as the leader's role? So that we can have a concept of it's not just one person responsible for doing all of this themselves as the leader of a team, but we can have a team of leaders doing all these together to build a team. Does that make sense? Maybe.
partially.
SAG was nodding, he got it.
Essentially, does this have to, is this going to have to at least be initiated all from one person, or can this arise organically, deliberately as well, obviously? But do you have to, does it have to be one person leading the charge on these kind of growth steps in a team, or can multiple people come up together to form this team to try and do this together, even if maybe one of them is not the per se leader who knows a little bit more than everybody else? I might be adding my own flair to that too, but.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the more people you have willing to build together, even as if you're forming a leadership team, it's great, because they can spread that work and initiate the team building, the whole thing together. And it's just that many more people with eyes on the people that are coming up and you're spending time with. So yeah, that would be great. And I think when we start getting up into here, those people there are doing that in this level here. Because there's, like I say, the further up you get, the more leading you're doing, and the further here, the more doing. So a lot of the proposals that might be happening that we talked about might be happening more at this level and being implemented at this level. Every level can do some kind of proposal, even if it's verbal. We don't recommend verbal for most things, but let's say it's a team huddle and we're looking for suggestions. That is a proposal. So yeah, I think you can do that. And then this is really your spiritual leadership level, and that's a whole nother thing that we have, teaching on what are the main responsibilities of a spiritual leader. And then that kind of speaks down to all of this, how that flows together and functions together too. And so we'll do those at another time. Let me say this, some recommended reading. Some of you are familiar with these books. If you have another question, we might be able to do one more. Patrick Lencioni, he's got a number of books that we recommend where teams are concerned. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. There's workbooks with that if you have a team, you can work through those together. He's got, on your bookshelf, you can have this many Patrick Lencioni books. I like all of them. He writes a lot of them in fable form, so you're reading a story with characters, real easy, quick reading. He went from 5 Dysfunctions, and there was a whole bunch, over to The Ideal Team Player, which was kind of it picked up where 5 Dysfunctions left off. And that's where you get, David wrote on some of the identifying leaders, humble, hungry, smart. And he talks about those 3 particular characteristics in that book, and you can self-evaluate in that one. Very good. He also wrote one called The Motive, which talks about whether you're reward-centered or responsibility-centered in your leadership. I read another one that was easy reading, and I thought fit a lot of people last fall, and it was Growing Weeders into Leaders. That was the author's name is Jeff McManus. He's the head groundskeeper at Ole Miss University in Oxford, Mississippi, and his story in there is really fun to read through, and the vision that he had and how it affected more than the grounds but the whole university. And if you take the thinking that he put there from the groundskeeping team into any team in a church or business and how that can improve it, you think, I could make an impact no matter what team I'm on. And so he goes through that in there, and then how he took the people that worked on his groundskeeping team and turned them into leaders. Very good book. So, Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, he's written a number of books which I like. I think they're very team-oriented and leader-oriented. So, any other thoughts before we wrap this up?
I guess I'll ask a question if that's okay.
Yeah.
Regarding conflict resolution, what are some tactics to start the question when you know the person is not ready to talk about it?
Mm-hmm. I have a whole lot of thoughts, but since we're recording it, I won't say those. I guess I'll give you the real ones. Maybe you couldn't tell it from these videos. I do have a sense of humor, but some of it, some people find a little awkward. So we will do probably a whole video on conflict resolution, and there's a lot of different ways that that can be said. The atmosphere that you're going to approach it in is always important. If you got a tough discussion, you don't have it at a coffee shop, and you don't sit at the big desk looking down at the person. You know, find a nice, comfortable atmosphere and ask questions. Hey, can you tell me about what happened? Or from your side, share with me how this all started or what caused this. And right there, you're not coming at them with correction, but you're respecting them by finding out what is it that happened on their side of it. And so that's a start. There's some other steps in there that are very worthwhile. And I will say this, that conflict resolution can become one of your greatest discipleship tools. And I used to carry a little slip of paper with me with like 5 steps on there on just what to do in that. And you know what, I think over the years that we were able to resolve almost all conflict in a better way just by following some of that. So there is good ways to do it. I don't know, you want to throw anything else in there?
Good. That's good.
Yep. All right, good. Hey, thanks so much. We'll have a lot more videos coming, and thank you so much for viewing.